Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the room 2, the room of Isocarp. Please, will you just mute yourself, also not share video for the time being before we start. So, okay, as we have proposed in our program, the room 2, the room which is moderated by myself. My name is Milena Ivkovic. I'm Director of Urban Planning Advisory Teams at Isocarp. The room 2 is dedicated to community-oriented plans. We would like to go a bit deeper into showing the methods and approaches for successful implementation of community-oriented plans. And in this room, we have 2 speakers. One speaker is Professor Ali Al-Arouf, who is a visiting professor at Hamad bin Khalifa University in Doha in Qatar, also a member of our Isocarp board. And the other speaker is Mr. Marco Jal, who is an urban designer, placemaker, and works at UN Habitat's public space department. I would like to invite first Ali, my dear colleague, to share his screen and show his presentation on the topic on the community-oriented plans.
Thank you so much, Milena, for the introduction. It's a great honor for me. Can I share my screen, please?
Yes, of course, you can share your screen. Just you have the authority to share it. You just press the button share screen, and then we can all see. Yes, that's
Perfect.
it. Perfect.
I'll put it in presentation mode. So I am really honored to be here, and thank you, Milena, for the invitation. On a personal level, I really love South Africa, and also on a professional level, Isocarp is so attached to South Africa, and we need to continue, as Milena is doing, plenty of activities and initiatives. My talk is basically divided into 2 main parts. The first part, where I will share with you what are the lessons that we have learned from our tough yet informative experience with post-COVID, with COVID-19. And then in my second part, I will also focus on the idea of community-oriented plans, community participation, community involvement, and how I will try to construct a different kind of paradigm where we would guarantee that this kind of integration of the community would fulfill our objectives. So first, my observations and reflections related to the time that we are living in now, and I think we are in exceptional time, but what is interesting is that within those exceptional times, we can come up also with exceptional decisions, because this is the beauty of the human power and our ability to face challenges and come up with very positive solutions and very positive future out of these challenges and crises. It seems to me throughout the time of the COVID-19 challenge, we did realize that we need to reconsider our relation with the environment. Are we constructing our environment, or are we deconstructing, or are we destructing? Because we did realize that before COVID-19, the world was full of pollution, the crowdedness, severe kind of momentum of living, as opposed to now when we start to see a bit of clear up in the skies, and even animals start to reclaim parts of the city. I think also we did realize that we had a first-hand experience on the notions of solitude, on the notion of loneliness, on the notion of isolation. And this kind of generate also a concept of fear. We started to have this fear from isolation. We are trapped in our homes we started by weeks and then months and almost half a year now. But to me, what is really amazing is the concept of fear from the other, and how we started to be suspicious about our relation to other people, and how our friends and our neighbors can be a source of illness as opposed to source of joy and happiness, and how this would affect the city, because it's pushing the city towards being sort of deserted as opposed to a vibrant place. And we saw a lot of examples of that in Wuhan, in China, in the most sort of historical and heritage areas. This is the case of the Colosseum in Rome, beautiful public spaces like Alexander Plaza in Berlin, but we ended up with a very fragmented number of people as opposed to the typical vibrancy that we are used to. Even spiritual places and sacred places, for the first time maybe in the history of those kind of places, they are transformed also into deserted, empty places. And the replacement, the alternative that we are enjoying now, including the meeting that we're doing now, is via the internet, is via computer interactions, is via Zoom meetings. But I think in light of our human nature, this cannot be sustained. We need to see each other. We need to interact with each other. The humans are literally social animals, and therefore, it seems to me that this is only a sort of an era in our understanding of humanity, but we would go beyond this. But also one wonderful observation came to us from COVID-19 paradigm is the idea of justice in the city, the idea of just city and the notion of opportunities. Not everyone can protect themselves. Not everyone can protect their dogs. Not everyone can be able to sort of maintain income while sitting at home. Because we did realize in other communities that people are forced to go into streets and places because they are working on a daily basis. They cannot put food on the table unless they go out on a daily basis. So when we tell people maintain social distance or work from home, this can fit in some cities, in some countries, but not every country and not every city. So this kind of major gap between what we are asking for, what we are preaching for, versus reality in some cities and spaces is also kind of something that we need to reflect on. So the very important kind of essence of conclusions that I thought I came up with from our experience with COVID is that individualism is not going to work anymore. The idea of having the individual, as the capitalism is suggesting, the individual as a center is not working anymore. I think the whole new paradigm should be based on the notion of solidarity, on the notion of community, on the notion of the triumph of those kind of values that invite people to be together and to be connected. And therefore, I think we are approaching kind of new paradigm in planning. And if we are not approaching it, I would say there is a need for a new paradigm of planning. And what is unique about coronavirus is that it offered this opportunity to have a new beginning, to have new questions, to have new approaches. But I would argue that the community is the new word in this, the new key word in this paradigm. And why I'm saying that? I'm saying that because one of the main features that I'm considering in this new paradigm is how to professionally, consciously, and subconsciously move from planning cities to building communities. I think this is fundamentally important because we did realize during the COVID-19 crisis that a lot of the suffering of people trying to face the harshness of this virus is related to planning decisions, related to urban design decisions, and related to the idea that we were not engaging people. We were not listening to people. Some of us still enjoy the ivory tower, and they don't have even the tools, the mechanism, the humbleness to listen to people and engage the community and truly understand the community needs. We are also excited about the urbanity of power and consumption and the big scale, big malls, big hotels. But we did realize during this also a crisis that all of these empties, even including mosques, are empty. Even churches and mosques are empty. So suddenly we realized that the kind of urbanism that we invest heavily on is not even used in those kind of crisis times. So I would also question the size of the city. And are we in engaging our effort only to go for the global cities, the mega city, the metropolitan scale? Or maybe it's a good time now, and we saw a lot of people in Italy, in Spain, in Holland, and a lot of places in Europe moving to the suburbs, moving to the villages because it was more safe, it was more connected to the nature. So would it be one of our fundamental questions in the new paradigm to celebrate more the concept of urban village rather than to look for the glory of the mega scale cities, and to move to this kind of intimate urbanism that created in the history of a lot of cities around the world, created very positive relation between people and places. And I would argue also that the very old notion that we kept on talking about, but we were not really motivated to implement, the notion of the compact city, the notion of stop independent zoning, stop independent kind of land use. Let's go for overlap. Let's go for interaction between residents, job, entertainment, shopping, social places, public spaces, and so on and so forth. I think also one of the beautiful lessons of COVID-19 is the idea of housing. We cannot keep on putting people in concrete boxes and claim that those are houses. We did realize after people were locked in their apartments, in their houses, and their flats, and their condos, and whatever, that people suffered from this isolation because all of these units were not prepared and designed and articulated in a way that would create positive life for people staying in it for weeks and months. Even small elements like balconies, we did realize the value of the balcony because the balcony during the crisis was not only a place where people would interact with the outside, would interact with the nature, but it was also a sort of a space where people can exhibit solidarity, can exhibit their talents, can even salute doctors and medical teams as a sort of gesture of appreciation. And another interesting thing also on the urban design level is related to the notion of neighborhoods, because also we did realize that whatever you have in your house, you need to go out. Even during the crisis of COVID-19, you need to do a bit of walking. You need to go and buy your grocery. So if the neighborhood is not prepared for that, it's not prepared for you to walk, it's not safe to take your children to a closed park and have a sort of a good small picnic with them. There's no places for solidarity, for sociability, for people from different ages and different genders and whatever to talk to each other and support each other. And the same story goes to public spaces and public life. Yes, we still can maintain social distance, but we cannot get rid of public life because this is the essence of any city. Is the examples of waterfronts, for instance. And to me, the most beautiful lesson from the COVID-19 lessons is the idea of the rhythm of the city, because we did realize suddenly that we don't need cars. We can walk. And once we started to walk, we started to talk and we started to meet friends and we started to get different flavor about our cities and about our neighborhoods. So I want to focus on that because we need also to listen to the community in terms of how do you feel about this new rhythm, the rhythm that allow you to have more friends and more people around you to share stories and experiences. So I would say, I think it seems to me that we need to go a bit beyond participation and even move. The second step would be collaboration, but I would argue that we need a sort of co-creation in urban planning, and therefore the community is our partner rather than our users or our target groups. I think the traditional model, the old paradigm, was based on independent kind of entities. The community is an entity, the administration, the city managers, and so on and so forth. It's also an independent entity, and then the experts like us. What was happening in this model, that we do the work, we do the planning, and in some cases, we claim that we engage the community, we involve the community. And this is why in the title of my presentation, I called it From Photo Sessions, because in those sessions, the product is done or almost done. So it seems to me that we need a new kind of paradigm where we go all the way from the base of the pyramid, where we use the community to inform us, all the way up to the notion of partnership. And therefore, we start from listening to their stories, listening to their aspirations, listening to their needs, as opposed to giving them a sort of an 80% product and telling them, how do you guys feel about this? And I want to quickly go into some cases in Qatar where I teach and live and consult, where I have solid cases showing us that we can learn from the community. The very first example is related to a paradigm that we are approaching and we are adopting in Qatar, which is knowledge-based urban development, because we are preparing to the post-oil paradigm and so on and so forth. This is a great project called Education City, where we have a lot of universities and educational facilities and research institutes and so on and so forth. But when we started to have a dialogue with the community, we started to listen to their evaluation of the project, suggesting that it's kind of gated community. Yes, it's beautiful from a knowledge-based urban development, but the community is kind of divorced from it. And because of this dialogue, we started to insert the projects and the activities that would bring the community in. One of which would be a major park, as you can see in the image, and trying to inject life in the different spaces of the city. Another project is to have a great mosque in a very contemporary architectural language, also to maintain the flow of people in different times during the day and also in the Friday, which is very important for Muslims. The idea of the National Library and hiring one of the top consultants in the world, Rim Kulas, to come up and design library right in the heart of the project, again as a tool to bring people in. Another interesting project is also in the heart of Old Doha, which was deserted and abandoned after the oil boom, and people moved from the heart of the city to the suburbs. But when we started also the urban revitalization, we had wonderful input from the community suggesting the idea of how this kind of development should be a representation of our heritage in a modern way, in a contemporary way. So we don't want you to stay in a specific time frame in our history, but make a balance between old and new, and how the different kind of mixed use development and urban design kind of contemporary guidelines should articulate the different places and spaces of the project. Another interesting project is a very iconic project, the Museum of Islamic Art. And it was designed by IMP as one of the most important cultural buildings in the city. But again, because of listening to community, because of understanding their needs, we started to create a sort of a new kind of dialogue between adjacent public spaces and the museum. Because people honestly told us that we are not a museum goers in this part of the world. This is something new to our culture. So we need to be tempted. We need to be excited about going to the museum. And one of the ideas is to provide for us maybe vibrant public spaces and green spaces. And once this was done, the whole idea, the whole context is becoming one of the most important and frequent destinations in terms of visiting and interacting with. And again, as you can see in the image here, it's becoming a wonderful kind of triology between the museum, the open spaces, and people and families. Final point regarding streets, because we did realize also, according to the economical level, that people in Qatar, they love their cars, they enjoy their cars. But then from our side as urban planners and urban designers, how to initiate a dialogue with them, to tell them that, well, we need to move from the concept of highways to the concept of streets. We need you to reclaim your right in the street as a public space, as a place where you can walk, where you can eat, where you can enjoy riding your bike. And the car will be sort of marginalized in this process. But when you show them case studies, and then when you start to do this, they would also support you and they would feel that you're doing something for them. So I want to end up with that people are the most important component in the planning process. And I would argue that we need to go beyond the idea of looking at people as a target group to listen to our decisions. I would suggest that we need to listen to them first and use their knowledge to help us to initiate ideas and come up with a plan that both of us, community and people would be, and the planners would be responsible for. And I want to end up with people are beautiful. Not every man should be Brad Pitt. Not every woman should be Angelina Jolie's, but all of us, we can love, we can care, and we can share. Thank you so much for having me. It's my honor.
Thank you, Ali. As always, you are giving us such a deep food for thought. You know, it's I really like this this presentation that goes from, you know, high concept and ivory towers, facing with the reality of COVID, and really finding the urgencies for better planning with more participation. Thank you so much. I think we are going to ask you some more questions in the Q&A round. I'm also inviting all other colleagues here in the call, in the breakout room, to already place some questions in the chat, which they would like maybe specifically to address to you. And with this, I would like to move to our next speaker, Mr. Marco Gial from UN Habitat. Mark, can you please share your video and share your presentation with us? I know that you are doing great work with UN Habitat and also great work in Nairobi in Kenya when you're based. So we are looking forward to your presentation.
My presentation would be really targeted to Ali setting the agenda, really bringing a lot of perspectives together. My presentation will focus more on creating a shared vision with communities, using creative methods, and really to come into an understanding of negotiated development, what it looks like. Indeed, from various presentations before, and Ali did underscore this, was inequalities that we have in our communities, and the need to reach out to people who are traditionally included in planning processes, hard to reach groups, including children. We have people living with disabilities, and then we have, they're normally not really included in the planning process. So this is to try and demystify that, turn that around. Then we are confronted with one thing. We need to negotiate or try and balance tensions between societal aspirations and organization. So this requires us to turn things upside down. If we are to get from adequate to ordinary, we think the city of tomorrow, to try and create a multi-hazard resilient city, we need to turn things upside down. Some of the tools that we suggest to use to do this kind of thing, or tools that we use, include digital storytelling. I think stories are really important, and from my experience, storytelling is important. African cities, and not just African cities, but cities in general, cities and communities are actually places for oratory talk, you know, places for telling stories. tactical urbanism has proven to be really useful, a way to mobilize people to support government and support top-down approaches, not top-down approaches, but co-creation of shared visions. It's a way to experiment ideas and to mobilize people, and lets people see the art of the possible. Participatory mapping, again, on location, is really key for us. This is important to reach out to the community where they are. We are in an era where drawing plans in boardrooms doesn't work, and inviting people to boardrooms again doesn't work. We need to go out there. The other thing which was mentioned again, I think was initially talked about by Siwe, was gamification and play. This is an important way to imagine the city, not only for children, but not everybody can read maps. People struggle with maps. Having an idea of games and ideas festivals, to be able to use play, to be able to do different things, help people to visualize ideas. But then some questions come. How far can this be brought into urban development decision making? How far community voices brought into this process? So we need to strike a balance. Where do we meet? Where does top-down approaches, a top-down approach meet urban? Collaborative design competitions is one way where these things could match. But then we have to give design principles. We have to also ensure that we have a place for integrated planning. Then integrated planning is not a top-down exercise. It needs to really look into what has been brought up from community conversation. And community-led competitions have also worked in our case in Nairobi. I'm going to share with you a little bit about Minecraft. Minecraft is a game that we use. We have the block by block program between UN Habitat and Moya. And it's used to bring children and the women and youth and elderly people together to visualize their ideas. Again, not everybody can sketch, not everybody can draw. But then if given a platform, through play and games, children can really share their aspirations. Safe neighborhoods are, what safe streets look like, and what play opportunities would look like for them. So it's really important for us to listen to children, but not only listen to them, but co-create with them. Again, looking at how this happens, normally after children play and young people visualize their ideas, this is one case where we used Minecraft in Nairobi, really rethink how a gateway could look like into a neighborhood. Children played, and they came up with ideas around using arts, using graffiti. You can see on the ground and some pictures, some people on the walls, and then included plans again around the gateway, and seating opportunities also. And to the right, you'd see an image of a complete design, what it looks like. It's used to inspire or improve architectural designs. These kind of things can really, again, inspire young children to aspire to be urban planners, to aspire to be people who create communities. When it comes to placemaking, we think this is an opportunity to make things happen. And again, take participation closer to people. Placemaking is a collaborative process which we use to create shared ambitions, to maximize shared value of the public realm. It really brings everybody together and it involves turning a place into one that one can't wait to get through, to one that you can't wait to live. Normally, this is one of the streets in downtown Nairobi. On a normal day, people would be rushing past this street. But when you use tactical urbanism to really show what is possible, to show what the street could look like, then people really imagine themselves enjoying the place, and don't you see such kind of posters, people posting for pictures, which would not happen ordinarily. So really turning it into what one would want to live, or a sticky place, if you will. Again, it involves listening to local wisdom and meeting the community where they are. It's important to note that there's a lot of local wisdom. If we tap into place leadership, into place governance, to understand how people understand their places, how they read their places, how they perceive their places, what local assets mean to them, we can go into what Ali calls building communities instead of planning cities, building communities. That's really important. Again, some of the things that we do include solutions before they are designed, before they are made permanent. What we've learned from experiences both in Nairobi and Kampala and Addis as well, that tactical urbanism, testing solutions, real spaces actually help to, one, mobilize local politicians, and then secondly, to mobilize local people to support an intervention. In terms of negotiating tensions, this helps to build trust. When people see that the street would actually be for them and they walk there, they really trust the process. And it helps to yield unlikely alliances. Where these things move, where these two processes meet, like I said earlier, bottom-up approaches cannot replace policy. We need to be able to merge bottom-up approaches on local wisdom to urban policies, to urban plans, and integrate all these things together. It is so important. Advocacy is not enough. We need to bring all these things together. One of the things from a process that I shared before was a master plan that was adopted by the government in Nairobi. And this was actually created, not just a design coming from the community. This is on the left-hand side of the screen. You see a street which was initially polluted, congested, and contested. Then on the right-hand side of the street, you see a street that is walkable, it's people-focused, there are many people walking, it's become the heart of the community in downtown Nairobi. So again, seeing how transformative processes or co-creation processes can lead to transformative change. The same process done in Kampala, Uganda, and really using community co-creation processes to reimagine the space. And Kampala is one of those difficult cities to walk in, with a lot of motorbikes moving left, right, and center, with the buses or matatus, public transport, moving everywhere. Then, because of this negotiated development, it creates shared ambition, and the result is on the right side. It's not really about sanitizing places, but really trying to create a place together, a community aspirations. The other thing that is important to note is that if we empower communities to lead the way of urban regeneration, reimagining the communities or reclaiming the community, we can have acupuncture projects across the city. This is an example of community interventions around Nairobi, where we use competitions, changing places competitions, or public space challenge, for communities to participate to transform their public spaces, their shared public spaces. This has proven to be a critical community mobilization tool to bring everybody to share their ambition and to take ownership of their spaces. Some of the key things that, as I close, I'd like to highlight that we need to ensure that community effort is actually protected within the law. Volunteerism is good, but we need to ensure that it is anchored within law and it is supported by government. Young people need to pay bills as well. So we need to be able to ensure that there's a framework. That's really important. And Nairobi has led with that. Placemaking has also been featured in the draft urban design development guidelines. Again, it is important for us to think about how to ensure the longevity or timelessness of these approaches. We need to ensure that there's a match between bottom-up and top-down, or at least some support. The other thing is to create a network and platform for planning and implementing partners. We've been talking about the Center for Public Space in Africa, and I think this is to be anchored in Johannesburg, led by the municipality of the city of Johannesburg and other partners. UN is also a partner. It's not only possible to have this at the city level, but we need to share knowledge at the continental level as well. What is public space and how can we start talking about this? We share more information on the network at the continental level later. We also need to think about how local ideas can be transformed by the city. And Nairobi has been leading that, Kampala has been leading that, and in Kampala now, some of the thought leaders have now been absorbed into high-level policy offices, and they're really leading that change. So we need to collaborate. We need to collaborate with politicians, as was mentioned earlier. Planning is a political process. We cannot run away from politics. It is part and parcel of work. We need to see how to do that. My last point would be to see how we can leverage competition. The power of the community, using competition to mobilize local voices, to mobilize local expertise, local wisdom, to transform public spaces into important community assets. That will be my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, so much. I think this was a very interesting presentation, Mark, to really show the tools, the needs, the arguments to have people more involved in the planning. And I really appreciated the cases you showed, both from Uganda and from Nairobi. And what really struck me at the end is when you're trying, and I know that UN Habitat is also very active in that you're really trying to make new connections and new departments in the city to make things possible. So not only let's say talk about it or do some smaller actions, but really trying to build it into the mainstream policy making by opening the special, for instance, public space and public participation departments within the municipalities. So that's a very positive change that it's happening. Dear colleagues, I would like to open now the Q&A question round. We have something like half an hour of a time to do the questions. I've seen some questions coming into the chat, and I also see some people raising their hands to pose their questions. So I would suggest that we first give the chance to people who have raised their hands to pose directly the questions. I have also noted some questions myself, also noted some remarks for our speakers, which I would like to pose as a question. And before I open the floor for the raised hands, just to remind you that we are having at this session also the visual recorders from South African Cities Network. So the talk in the Q&A is going to be sketched, visualized, documented, and we will be sharing the outcomes of the Q&A in the final plenary within approximately half an hour. Okay, so I would like to first ask Mr. Tony Markovic to pose his question. I think your question, Tony, was more about how can you achieve the dialogue within the participation process.
Thanks, Milana.
Yeah.
I've reframed my question slightly after listening to the second presentation, but I think I have a real concern, because if at this late stage in the whole discipline of planning, we are still talking about planners who do not talk to communities, then I have a real concern. I really just cannot understand that. And in my 40 years of planning, We are always chastising each other and advising each other and saying, you must talk to communities, you must talk to communities. So why are planners not talking to communities? And I'm not sure that I have the answer now, but I think that I have a few suggestions as to why that's happening, particularly from a South African point of view. Firstly, I don't think that there is enough budget made available for the kinds of participation and consultation processes that have been talked about in these presentations here, which I think are excellent, and I really enjoyed those presentations and ideas coming from them. So the costs and budget is a significant constraint. I think also the way that planning projects are set up within the municipalities particularly is that the planning departments are put pressure by the politicians to get something out so that they can tick a checkbox. And the planners that are running with that just want to get the checkbox done and are not really interested in the actual participation. I think another point within South Africa is that it's very difficult to go into some communities. I think people are actually scared to go in and do consultation. So I think those are just a couple of things which I think we really need to take heed of, because if we're not doing that, then we're in serious trouble. My other point was more to Ali, is really, I think consultation and everything that he showed was fantastic. I'd be very interested to find out how he did that consultation, what were his techniques, and secondly, how do you take a decision about what is right and what should be implemented once you've got all this consultation, because you don't come with a solid view that says, oh, we must go left or we must go right. Everybody's screaming and saying we must go in different directions. So how did these projects actually come to some consensus? Thank you for that opportunity, Milena.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, very much for asking these questions. It's I have my own points of view on that, since I'm a practitioner in urban participation here in the Netherlands. So here are the experiences quite different. But I will first give the floor to Ali to be able to reply to your question, because you posed a very concrete question to Ali. How was the consultation done in the process? In the projects you showed us, Ali.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Milena.
And actually, also the question that bothers me all the time doing all these participation projects, doing a lot of gamifications and tactical urbanism, is how do we apply the ideas that are coming from the neighborhood, that are coming from the citizens? How do we apply them using our tools? How do we make them real in the cities?
So thank you, Milena. Thank you, Tani. Absolutely wonderful observations and questions. And I just want to support what you were saying regarding being really surprised after all these kind of decades, not years, talking about the importance of listening to people and listening to the community and engaging them. But planners are not doing that, or in some cases, as you said, you're surprised that they're not doing that. And I would argue, Tani, that we have a tendency to talk more to politicians, to developers, to city managers, because, as you rightly said, the element of time, if you want to go for authentic community engagement, if you want to go for a process by which you will really listen to the community, it takes time. And this would answer also your second question. It takes time. But politicians, developers, and city managers, they don't believe in that, because they are after achievements. They are after flashy kind of billboard saying that my city is the most sustainable city on earth, or my, I don't know what. So I think without a sort of a mutual belief between all the different stakeholders regarding, and this is, I think this is the beauty of COVID-19, that the world almost freezed. So we did realize that we do compete in terms of time, but time can stop. So I think the element of time is fundamentally important. Now, regarding the process of consultation, and as Milena said, how to go even beyond tactical urbanism and gaming and so on and so forth. I think, and maybe some of our colleagues in South Africa also can support me in this, I think one of the wonderful ideas that we've learned, Tani, in the context of Qatar, Gulf, and the Middle East, that you need really to understand the local culture. You need to understand the mechanism by which people voice their opinions. Because in some cases, due to maybe political issues, managerial issues, whatever, they will be reluctant to talk. They will be reluctant to participate. But in case of Qatar, for instance, there's a wonderful social pattern called the Majlis. The Majlis is a place where people go to it and they talk freely. They talk about their issues. They talk about their problems. They talk about their aspirations in a very casual, family-like environment. So what we were able to do is to penetrate those kind of gatherings and to take credibility within those gatherings, and then gradually expose the ideas, expose the challenges, and listening to them. Now, the idea of which decision to be selected, I think also we have to acknowledge that we are professionals and we have knowledge. So what we were able to do, like in the case of Education City, for instance, or the case of the museum, that in light of what we have learned from the community, we will do some alternatives. We will come up with some answers. And then we will again do one more round or maybe more rounds to verify our findings and to make sure that we are on the right track. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ali. Great. It's nice to hear how actually we should listen and try to involve the local cultural elements when we are shaping this participation trajectory. Because if we don't understand, then there will also not be a good implementation of the results of this process. And if there are some quick fixes we can use by recognizing, like you said, those places which people already know from their cultural background, then we should really use it. I will go to the second raised hand. There are a lot of raised hands right now. There are also a lot of questions in the chat. I will try to do it first come, first serve basis, but there are really a lot of questions, which makes me extremely happy. We are definitely on a good track. I will ask Mr. Abir Alaham to, yes, pose his question. Please go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, good afternoon. My question is to Dr. Ali. Thank you first for the talk and the presentation. Basically, you have two main themes or two parts in your presentation. The first one is the questions you raised about COVID-19 and the issues that were brought to the fore. And then you said that community engagement is the new paradigm, kind of a new paradigm, which is not new, but how to think of it. You put that ladder of participation that we go up, which is of Sherry Ernstein, but this has been talked about since ages. And no solutions have been really successful in reaching the upper ladder. For me, this is kind of extension of the first question of before me. The issue is politics. You know, it's power game, power structure in the society. Kind of transferring some kind of power from the power holders, decision makers, power holders to the community is the issue. So there is, it heads with the structure of capitalism and new liberalism. So it will not work unless the power structure of the stakeholders and decision makers is changing. The other question is regarding Qatar. You said that Qatar now is moving toward being knowledge-based city. And I was shocked actually with the star architects that Qatar is hiring to build its architecture, like Zaha Hadid and Jean Nouvel for the museum, creating kind of a barrier. Their architecture is a barrier for people to be involved with. And then this was ended up with a plaza or public space around that architectural, nice architecture, nice buildings. Kind of the urban designer is designing on behalf of people, for people, taking decision for people and not with people. So this kind of contradicts with what you started with as engagement with people. It's kind for people, not with people. Thank you.
Yes, Ali, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Abir, for your two questions. Interestingly, you said that you were not able to come up with anything new because you're saying that we need community engagement, and this is what we were doing or what we were preaching for. Well, if you were really focusing during my lecture, I was saying we need to move away from community engagement to community partnership. So that was exactly what I was calling for. I was saying that for a long number of years and decades, we were only looking at the community to engage it in the process that we already done. We have, I said that literally, we have 80% product, and then we exhibited the community, and we call this community engagement. This is what I was not looking for. I was saying in my lecture, literally, that we need community participation and partnership. And by partnership here, I meant that planning is a two-way process. We have the professional knowledge, and the community, they have the local knowledge. They have the deep understanding of their needs and aspirations. So without really making those two ways of communication, starting from the very first minute, not as a sort of a design review, we're not going to do anything. And then you said,
how can you reach it?
Can I finish? Can I finish, Abir? Can I finish?
Yes, please.
Can I finish?
Sorry.
And then you said you were not able to show us good examples about that. But ironically, I showed you 4 or 5 examples from Doha, where this new paradigm of community partnership helped us, although we are the professionals, although that we are planners, although that we are the brains. But I did admit for all of you in my lecture that we have learned from the community. When you have the good intention and you listen to the community, then it's a radically different story. Now, regarding what you said in terms of Qatar and bringing star architects, well, number one, I think this is totally out of the context of this discussion. But in other time, I would send you some literature and analysis showing you that having a star architect has nothing to do with abandoning and marginalizing the community. On the other hand, if you believe in your community, if you believe in the local knowledge, if you believe in local architects and local planners, you still can have dialogues with all of these architects. And I have firsthand experiences with Jen Novell, with Rem Koolhaas, where they were literally listening to us, and they changed a lot of their design decisions because of serving the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you for your question, Abir. I would like to pick up now a question from Q&A, because I feel like people in a Q&A chat are maybe a little bit underestimated with people who raise their hands. So I will balance the questions from the chat and from the raised hands. There is one question to you, Mark, actually from the chat, and that's from Marcel Zimmerman from Johannesburg. I think it's relevant for your presentation, and that's how were local municipal councillors involved in the local community planning initiatives you had in Nairobi that you were showing. I think that's a quite important question for us to know. How do you involve the local municipal councillors?
So what we learned from our process is that whenever we have this kind of events, they attract social media buzz. Yeah. And politicians have no option but to plug it. It was difficult at first, but then when they see communities going in, they come in. One of the cases I didn't share was when we started a community intervention. And then because politicians felt that they were losing relevance, they had to invest money to support. So when we're doing a street, they did the paving. We planted trees. So again, it's about how to balance that power and to ensure that we don't give too much power to them. And if I may respond to the question on why planners don't talk to communities.
Yes, of course. Please go ahead.
Yes, I think besides having inadequate budget to be able to support these kind of things, we also need to ensure that these are enshrined in law. In Kenya, participation is part of the constitution. It's really at the core of the constitution. And then we have supporting legislations to ensure that it is operational. The other thing is that we need to be able to empower the communities to agitate for. As planners, it is our role to ensure that there is that civic awareness and ensure that the communities know their rights. If we do this, we're able to have a community that can ask for more and can ask the right questions. We also need to train planners to collaborate with communities, especially in societies like ours and in South African context, where there's no trust between communities and government officials. Our role here would be to mediate and train planners to talk differently. Because normally when you have opposing sides, everybody takes a really strong stand, nothing moves. Planners will treat to their own. We need to mediate and talk to both sides in a nice way. Of course, the other thing is to build trust. To build trust between both sides. One is to ensure that everything is transparent. If the process is transparent, we will certainly talk to the communities. And if planners also feel like, it is working for them, because oftentimes they don't have time, they don't have the political support, they will actually ensure that community voices are just get.
Okay. Great, thanks, Mark. I think that's you raised also a very good observation about building the trust in local municipalities. Also building the trust in what planning can do. You know, that's something that it's still kind of, I feel, a bit detached. What planning can really do and what the people are expecting from planners that they can do. So that's I would like just to give a little side note on this, and that's when you mentioned the social media, and when you mentioned like, okay, but politicians also would like to see impacts on the ground very quickly. It's I think somewhere at the beginning of the COVID crisis, I had together with other colleagues from the placemaking movement, and you're also part of it, Mark. That's how I know you. We organized actually a little webinar on these, let's say, guerrilla strategies in communication, on how to really get things from the ground using simple tools as social media, because it's also something that can speak to the local politicians as well. It's a kind of leverage tool to really push things going further if you can reach local politicians. I will go now to the again, one raised question, one raised hand from Endumiso. Please, can you pose your question to our colleagues? Okay.
Yebo, Sanbonani, again. Thank you kindly. The presentations are very interesting, especially the one from Umark, because the contexts are similar to South Africa, especially with regards to pedestrianized movements, especially within the city center. That is something that we are also sort of working with some of our planners from our land use management department, just around informality and how to improve those. And the one thing that I did want to speak about, I thank Utoni as well. He raised some critical things with regards to participation. The one thing I just wanted to kind of, it's an opinion and a bit, there is budget. We see every day that budgets are there. We're not even going to talk about the budgets that have been lost in the in the past couple of months that could aid in things like participation. So budgets are there, Tony, but we'll take that discussion outside of this session. Then there is, for me, gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is one of the biggest issues in participation, or that hampers and hinders proper participation, especially because even when we were still in the collective group, we mentioned political will and political interference. That's one of the biggest issues, which ends up gatekeeping information from communities, and also just keeping them away from participation, because sometimes the councillors will then act as the representative instead of actually allowing the communities to come in themselves and have a voice for themselves. One of the other things is that I felt, as mentioned, that the fact, there's time constraints, and perhaps we need to start revisiting project timelines. Sometimes we sort of confine ourselves to trying to get things out within 3 months, get this done. But then we forget to know, allow the process to go expand so that you can get as much of a voice as Professor Ali mentioned, that you draft something or you get communities, you draft something, then you take it back to your community, speak to them, say, okay, guys, what you have raised, is it reflected in the plan? Go back, revise that plan, come back again with a sort of an improved product. Then you can sort of say, yes, you have listened, as Utoni was mentioning, it's how do you then listen to the voices? But that way you allow yourself, so it's not a one-step process, but you have various stages within the process of community engagement. And then within the context of South Africa, what I have kind of seen, because I work within, hence why I always ask about informality, because I work for the human settlements departments and informal settlements specifically. One of the biggest thing is that you find in our communities, one, it's education. People don't have the requisite educational levels to be able to engage properly, unfortunately, because of historical issues in the country. Then also the historical issues, people still want to vent. When in our context, when we come to communities, people want to vent, people want to get that anger out that they haven't been able to, because one, officials don't come, they don't come regularly so that they see them. When they do come, they might say something, and then when that project has sort of problems, people don't go back to the communities to say, okay, guys, we had this problem, this is now what we might be doing. And then in that essence, people feel like they are left out and are left behind and never know anything. And when something else comes, now it's like, but you guys said you're going to do this. You never came back and told us what these problems happened or whatever. Now you're coming with something totally different. No, we don't want that. What happens to what you wanted to bring? So it's that constant engagement with communities that we're trying to build now and that we need to build everywhere. So that communities, as Mark mentioned as well, communities need to feel themselves as a part of the process, not just they have a word or they have an opinion, but no, they are a integral part of the process. And then how do we go about that? Yeah, and then just one thing, I'm sorry I'm saying so many things, is that the marginalized communities, some of the I see, especially some of the Qatar sort of examples, is that it looks like it's not necessarily the marginalized people who are educated, people who sort of have the finances are able to find themselves or put themselves in community places. But it's those people, as Mark, there was that photo that Mark showed when he began his presentation of the child in the background standing behind the elders and of the disabled person sitting a bit to the side. How do we include those marginalized people within our cities, within the planning process? All the people, the informal people, the homeless, how do we include them to make sure that their voice is also heard so that we can sort of build better communities and better cities? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ndumiso. There is you raised a lot of questions. The question of time, the question of process. You know, for myself, if I may answer or give a short comment to your many questions, is if the participation is at the beginning of the process, then it has bigger chances to really deliver something on the ground. If it's just, as Ali said, it's 80% is already done, architects made their plans, everyone made everything, and then you just pose a question, do you want a tree left or right? So that's not really a participation, you know. So that's, I totally agree with that. Budgeting is a special issue. We can make a webinar only about participative budgeting, and generally municipal budgeting for impact on the ground as a result of participation. I think we can raise that question in the final plenary when we are going back there in 5 minutes. And finally, my last remark is about the tools and how do we communicate with people without formal education. And I don't mean only formal education in planning or architecture, but formal education now in the level of middle school or elementary school and that kind of stuff. And I think that Mark showed that there are many tools for that. It's the question, not everyone can draw, not everyone can understand AutoCAD drawing. I mean, even my colleagues sometimes cannot understand. The complexity of planning, of visualization of planning is huge. So I think that's also one of the tasks of us as kind of pioneers in co-design processes, to choose the right tools to speak with the people. That's the way how we can involve them. The last question I will take from Osbert, who raised his hand. Please, Osbert, can you just pose your question very quick, because we have approximately another 5 minutes, and then the computer will break us and bring us back to the plenary room.
Yes, good afternoon. I would like to pose my question to Mark. He talked about bottom-up planning in Uganda, but as for me, it has not worked, because we see the city also, the political wing trying to talk to the people that these urban authorities are all against the people's wishes. And I think bottom-up planning has not worked in Uganda. I'm based here in Kampala, and it has not worked at all. See the political wing trying to tell the people to reject what technical wing has done, which shows that it is more of top-down planning here in Kampala. Thank you.
Okay, if I may respond to that quickly, because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
So just to say that participatory processes take time, and changing mindsets takes time. It's a process, it's a journey. And having said that, I would say that we should not stop. The change that I showed on the screen was implemented last year. It is not long ago. You know, we need to have the right mindset, bring everybody on the table. And if you need mediators, it is the role of academics, the role of the civil society to step in and bridge the gap. I think it's possible, it's doable, and in Kampala, it's just starting.
Okay. Thanks a lot to your short answer, Mark. It is always, as you say, it takes a lot of time, and if we can somehow speed up this timeline, we already know from our different participatory contexts now after COVID. I think there is really a chance to somehow change that, because there is a need, and we already saw it in the first presentation of Ali. The question of social justice suddenly came above. You know, not everyone can stay at home, play favorite music, and do some little work on a laptop. You know, because it's suddenly it's a lockdown. A lot of people have to go and risk themselves to get ill because they cannot afford to stay at home. They have to work, they have to move around, they have to deliver things, they have to deliver goods. So there is now really a critical moment to try to speed up, to accelerate this process of participation. And I completely understand Osbert's remark that it's still very much top down. I can assure that even in Europe, it's still very much top down. A lot of projects, despite the efforts, despite the budgets, a lot of projects are still, like we already sketched, 80% is done and 20% you ask someone, you know, how to deal with it. One of the solutions, I think, coming from, let's say, Europe, or lessons from Europe, is, of course, you have to place participation to the people also as a very serious question. People need to organize themselves as well. And that's very tough in different parts of the world. When you don't have much, it's difficult to organize yourself. And I think we need to also reconsider what is the tool and what is the scale of participation, on which scale we can achieve the most with participation. And I think that's why I think tactical urbanism and placemaking is really a good point to start with. As the scale gets bigger, the question becomes more political. And then we get, you know, as planners and designers, somehow we tend to lose ourselves in a big political games and a big political topics. Okay, are there any other questions from the raised hands? If we have 3 more minutes to raise your hand. If there are no spontaneous questions, then I would like to read some of the Q&As from the chat, or at least some of the chat remarks. A lot of chat remarks have been coming in. We have been diligently recording everything, including your chat remarks. And we will try to give the answers to all those questions that were coming to the chat. There is one remark, I would like to read it from you, from Kirsten Wilkins. She says, like, we stopped designing spaces and we moved to designing experiences. And this has really helped to bring together the emotion of being people in an urban environment and move away from the planning jargon, from the planning language. I think that I would like to maybe hear a short opinion of you, Ali. Do you think that our planning profession really needs to completely move to designing experiences in order to stop designing spaces and move to more into designing experiences?
Well, you know, Milena, when I read this comment, I sent, I cannot really agree more with the essence of the comment, because you know what, and I want to move from being a bit about the issue. I do believe in the value of terminology, and when you go from designing a space to designing an experience, it suggests, it's embedded in it, that you have to listen to people to make sure that they would really enjoy, or they would feel, or they would go through the experience that they are looking for. I think our problem in the previous paradigm was based on assumptions, was based on the idea of we are 100% sure how people would act and react to places and spaces, because we have learned this in our 5 years of learning architecture or urbanism or planning.
Exactly, yes.
I totally believe in the word experiences. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I'm waiting now for our switch to the big breakout room and to our final plenary. What we are going to do in the final plenary is we are going to listen to the findings of the colleagues from other breakout room sessions, because I think there were a lot of discussions in other breakout room sessions. We can't be in all the rooms at the same time. So let's listen to their feedback. And just maybe also a little bit as a conclusion to this room, which is more about tools and methods and how to achieve this planning participation, is I got one of the comments in the chat that says, like, why do we still need to organize webinars to motivate planners to do more participation? And I think that we really need to go back to our contexts, our cities, and try to really identify what are these roadblocks, why are we not really more part of the participation, and why is this not giving the effects that we would like to give, and how can we, what are the new skills we will need to learn, and maybe we can use the COVID as a crisis to push us a little bit more into digital sphere, into digital placemaking, or digital tools. How can we, what are the new skills that are required from us, having had these 5 years or 4 years or 3 years of professional education, which obviously is not very much fit for the participative processes. Okay, thank you very much. I think we are now back to the main room.